So by now you've probably seen Logan, right? Hugh Jackman's supposed last hurrah as Wolverine? When it released last year, it was a massive success, both critically and commercially. And rightfully so, because on all fronts it's a fantastic film, even going so far as to be nominated for an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay, which might be the first comic book movie to ever do so. I figured, in honor of this fantastic movie, it might be a good time to talk about one of the character's first forays into the world of gaming. I actually planned to have this video made a long time ago, but hey. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to cover every single game that's ever featured the character, since I'd be here for days counting off the numerous X-Men games alone. Just going to focus on the first game specifically starring the Wolverine. Based on the ever-popular comic book character, a game simply titled Wolverine was released on the NES in late 1991 exclusively in North America. Now, this game was developed by a little company called LJN. Maybe you've heard of them? They're widely considered to be one of the worst developers of the NES era, specializing in shitty licensed games such as Back to the Future games, Uncanny X-Men, Friday the 13th, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, among so many others. Just my kind of company. But enough about them, let's get to the game, shall we? First things first, let's talk about presentation, as usual. The title screen looks nice, with decently well done art of Wolverine, but that's really all there is, just this image and a player count. Then you just hit start and you're in the game. From here on out, it's a mixed bag in the presentation department. Wolverine's sprite is nice at least, although they gave him one hell of a square chin. His character is recognizable, sporting his orange and brown outfit from his solo comics. The sprites for Magneto and Sabretooth are also pretty nice too, but I'll get to them later. As for the regular enemies, the same cannot be said. Most of the enemies are just black and white outlines, seriously. Call them whatever you want, those are outlines. Outlines that throw nondescript balls of, well, something. Worst of all, they just spawn out of thin air, making it impossible to know if they're there or not before you're right on them. Other than that, you face off against innumerable stage hazards, Kurt Russell lookalikes, Daft Punk Frankensteins, and bubbles. And I'm not talking about Cobra bubbles here, I'm talking straight up suds and water. Really? And the hit detection on every enemy is fundamentally broken, but I'll get more into that later. Trust me, I've got plenty to mention first. In line with that is the environments. They vary from each other, sure, but there's really just two ways to describe them. Bland and poorly designed. It's hard to tell one part of a level apart from another, as it all just looks the same, really. Makes it very hard to tell where you've been and where you're going. And they're all based around different themes, such as a fire level, water level, trap-based level, and so forth, which I'll go over in a little more detail later on. The problem lies in the design. Aside from the samey looking environments, the screen size is your worst enemy. So much of this game is making leaps of faith to places you cannot see, hoping there's a platform there, and hoping you don't land on an enemy. But I'm gonna let you in on a secret. There will always be an enemy under you, or a death pit. Always. The music in this game is fine, I guess. It all pretty much bleeds together from level to level though, and it overuses the same sort of tremolo effect far too often. It's not the worst video game music I've ever heard, far from it, but I wouldn't call it good by any means either. It just sort of exists, really. This all ties into the story, sort of, which is barely even present throughout. Essentially, Sabretooth trapped Wolverine on an island and is putting him through trials in an effort to kill him, or something like that. It's not explained in the actual game, just in the manual, and the most you get during the game is a single line of dialogue from Sabretooth between each stage. One single, cheesy sentence said between levels. So basically, it's stupid and bland. A recurring theme, really. But now we come to the coup de grace, the crowning achievement of this game, the gameplay. And boy, does it all go downhill from here. This is it. This is the point where I almost gave up. I recorded footage once, got the script halfway done, and then my laptop died. Resources, footage, everything gone. That's part of the reason this video is a year late. I mention this now because this game plays so badly, I couldn't find the will to revisit it to even get footage again for a long time. But I've done it, and I'm back to talk about it. You use A to jump and B to punch. Simple, right? That's before factoring in the absolutely dreadful amount of input lag. There are plenty of times where you need to time your jumps from edge to edge perfectly, and you get completely screwed because of the input lag, especially in the last few levels. I'll get more into that a bit later on. Now, it's a well-known fact that Wolverine has two main superpowers. He has his claws, the three that jut out of his knuckles to slice and dice his enemies, and he has his healing factor, allowing him to gradually regenerate. You may notice his claws are missing from the start, You can use them in the game, unsheathing them with a press of the select button, but here's the kicker. Every time you attack with the claws, Wolverine loses a bit of health. It is by far one of the most infuriating things about this game, especially since some of the later enemies can just absorb a bunch of damage, so they take forever unless you use the claws. And the claws are also only usable when you have green health in your meter, so if you have less than a third of your health, they're unusable. It's the opposite of accurate to the source material. Wolverine doesn't have regenerating health either. Not that regenerating health wasn't possible at the time, considering that Punch-Out and even Hide-Glide from years before had a form of health regen. It just didn't bother to try to program it. The only way to recover health is from pickups, which take the form of burgers for just health, or what I can only assume is beer, which restores health and some of your berserker meter. Oh yeah, he also has his berserker rage in this game, although good luck ever trying to get it to activate naturally. The meter slowly fills up as you defeat enemies, but here's the kicker. Every single enemy is a hitbox. If you're so much as standing too close to an enemy, your health will start rapidly draining away. Because of this, you generally die too fast to ever get the berserker meter to fill up. All it does is offer a temporary buff to your strength anyway, so it's generally not worth having. It's far easier to just jump past every enemy on screen instead. In a pinch, you can also summon Havoc to come save you, provided you struggle your way down to the secret path in the second stage, but he's honestly not worth grabbing. All he does is walk forward with the stupidest looking walk animation ever, taking out whatever is directly in front of you. You summon him the same way you pull out your claws, but only when you have less than a third of your health. It's hardly viable. Now, the only way I can continue this review is going level by level, detailing my different issues and struggles with the game. And trust me, there were many struggles to be had. The first level, just called the first trial, is probably the best level in the game, which is unfortunate considering it's horrible. The poor level design is on full display here, consisting of the same death pits, leaps of faith, and poor enemy placement as the rest of the game. All the enemies just sit in one spot and throw projectiles, phase in and out of existence, or just walk back and forth. It's a mess. Second level is the trial by air, and it consists entirely of floating platforms with stupid magnets that constantly pull you into the death pits below. Now this level does show a little creativity, offering multiple paths to get to the end and the path that leads to Havoc, but it loses any spark of good it had because of, again, leaps of faith, poor enemy placement, and those stupid magnets pulling you over the edge. The third level is the trial by traps, which is mostly a straightforward path, but spike traps, swinging axes, enemies, and boulders randomly pop out of nowhere and follow you wherever you go. Traps are literally everywhere, making the whole thing a tedious grind of trying not to die, just to make it through. It's kind of a secret room where you can get a free continue though, so that's a thing. The fourth level is the trial by water, and it has got to be one of the worst water levels in gaming ever, and that's not an exaggeration. You have to constantly navigate narrow swimming paths with propellers that eat away at your health, while also trying to dodge the stupid bubble and diver enemies. Wolverine also has an air meter, because of course he does. Can't program regenerating health, but felt the need to include an air meter for underwater traversal. Also, I guess Wolvie's lungs have gotten really bad from all those cigars, because he can't even hold his breath for 30 seconds without needing air. I wish this was the worst level in the game, but it's far from it. The fifth level is the trial by terror, and this one was my breaking point. This is literally a straight path across, but it's littered with these Daft Punk Frankenstein monsters, Reapers that throw skulls at you, and pinpoint accurate jumps over glowing green pits that one-shot you if you touch them, and those classic insta-kill spikes later on. In my initial playthrough, this is where I ran out of continues and got booted back to the main menu. I straight up input some Game Genie codes for infinite lives and claws not using up my health so I could finish the game. I'm not even ashamed. This game is such bullshit that I had minimal choice if I planned on finishing it. Level 6 is the trial by fire, and this might actually be hands down the worst fire level in all of gaming. Same issues as every previous level, ramped up to 11. It's also fronted by Sabretooth saying some like it hot, and that might just be this game's biggest sin. But in all seriousness, the poor level design here is accentuated by the bursts of fire that will one-shot you if you touch them, and they are everywhere. A majority of this level is just running on a platform over a burning death pit, and it's not fun. There's also panels of that platform that will fall at random from these, making it even more infuriating. After the trials, there's a level of breaking into Sabretooth's stronghold, and this is where the game really becomes a rage fest. Between the precision platforming over insta-kill spikes, these spawn-looking motherfuckers with grenade launchers, turrets mounted to the ceiling, and the clusterfuck of enemies, just getting through this level is a battle of attrition in itself. And on top of that, you're stuck in this winding, confusing mess of a maze the whole time. Then, in level 8, Magneto shows up out of nowhere and you have to trek through actually the worst level in the game to get to him. There's a segment in this level where you have to jump from platform to platform over top of where you've already been to get to him, but instead of death pits below, it's earlier segments of the level. So if you fall, you have to do it all over again. I swear, I must have been stuck here for 20 minutes just trying to get across. I'm not one who typically rages or throws a controller, but this level had me uncomfortably close. Seriously, no game with controls this bad should be this demanding. At the end of this level is the game's first boss fight, against Magneto of course. It consists of him behind an electric wall with boulders flying at you. Now you might think you have to break things like throwing the boulders, or maybe hit them towards the electric wall to break it. It's a wall of electricity, it should electrocute you by touching it, right? Nope. You run up to it and punch pure electricity until that door is gone, then you run up to Magneto and punch him a couple of times and you're done. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. The final level is the battle against Sabretooth. Some of the other X-Men say in a cutscene that they'll try to help you with the fight, but the loner-ass Wolverine of course says no. The battle takes place on a cliffside and it's by far one of the worst, most infuriatingly bullshit boss battles I've ever played. It's not enough to just beat the shit out of Sabretooth, no, that would be too easy. You actually have to punch him and knock him off the cliff at the edge of the screen. The problem with this is that he's constantly jumping around the screen like a jumping bean, often undoing all the progress you made. The only way to win is by catching him in a loop and hoping that it works. It's gotta be one of the worst fights I've ever played. Once all is said and done, you get a profile shot of Wolverine and then it's the end. Anticlimactic is an understatement. Basically, even by NES and LJN shovelware standards, this is one of the worst games I've ever had to play. While it may be considerably better than the other NES X-Men game, it's still a travesty of gaming. Don't play this game, seriously, not even as a joke, it's that bad. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go watch Logan again. I could use a good cry. Hey there, thanks for watching this video. I know it's been a long time since I've even done a video at all, let alone a video like this, but I really plan on fixing that soon. I'll leave a couple links to my last couple videos if you want to check them out, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.